Anneke. Time for another episode of Green Jeans.
You bet. And this week's episode is brought to you by the pimple on my upper lip. For those of you on YouTube, you have the pleasure of seeing it.
You can't see it.
I can. That's all that matters.
That is true. When one has a personal foible, I've been having trouble with my hair all week. So I've been looking at these Zoom calls and being like, man, what's that bump in my hair?
Well, there you go. And for anyone who's only listening on audio, don't forget that we are also on the Green Amendments for the Generations YouTube, so you can see our lovely faces. And so for those of you that haven't joined us before, we are the Green Jeans duo. My name is Anneke Van Rossum, and I am joined by my co-host / mother,
Maya Van Rossum.
And we talk about activism through a generational lens, and we talk in our own life experiences, and we bring on wonderful guests who have stories that you probably have never heard of before, and try and uplift very important messages and give you all hope to defend the planet and stay positive about environmental change.
Yes, and this week you have the joy of just Anneke and I talking a little bit about our life experience and our life belief when it comes to the way we eat. But before that, we have to have a fact check.
This is your weekly fact check.
Weekly fact check. And so this fact check is kind of a lead into our conversation of the day about vegetarianism. And so the assertion by many is that animals that are going to slaughter, like pigs and cows, are too stupid to know or to realize what's about to happen to them or what is happening to them. Fact check, not true. These animals do know that they're going to slaughter. In fact, pigs are well known to be actually very smart animals. They're smarter than dogs, and they're even known to be smarter than 3-year-old children. So, we know that our kids understand when bad things are about to happen to them, and we know that our dogs understand when bad things are about to happen to them. So too do pigs. People try to say, okay, well, maybe pigs, but not cows. No, the experience of people witnessing cows going to slaughter is they absolutely do know what's happening or about to happen. Maybe not exactly, maybe not precisely, but they have a fear, right? Something is wrong and they have a fear. And I think, this is very clearly demonstrated by the fact that the way they get these pigs and these cows to go into the system that's leading them to their slaughter is very often they have to use, not only do they hear squeals and cries and, you can see it in their eyes, but they have to use electric prods to force them out of the trucks, to force them down the line, to force them where they want to go, because they don't want to go there. Why do they not want to go there? Because they know that there is something wrong. And so that's the fact check. But I also, as I was doing a little bit of my reminding myself about this important information, because this is something that I know, I came across a couple of striking things that literally brought me to the edge of tears. So one was this situation a couple of years ago, and I don't know the outcome, but there was a woman who saw pigs in a truck going to slaughter. And she gave them water because she could see that they were, something was awry, and determined that they were dehydrated. And I think this is a woman that actually is very mindful of this issue. And she was giving them water. And guess what happened? She got arrested. She had to go to court. They were prosecuting her. And if she had lost her case, and I don't know if she did or not, she could not only be subjected to a $5,000 fine, but to go to jail. And because they said that her giving water to the pigs was interfering with somebody's livelihood.
What?
I mean, trying to ease the suffering of an animal. And then there's another news story I found, and there's no way for me to paraphrase this. So I'm just going to read this quote from the article. After they are unloaded, cows are forced through a chute and shot in the head with a captive bolt gun meant to stun them. But because the lines move so quickly and many workers are poorly trained, the technique often fails to render the animals insensible to pain. Ramon Moreno, a longtime slaughterhouse worker, told the Washington Post that he frequently has to cut the legs off completely conscious cows. They blink, they make noises, he says. The head moves, the eyes are wide and looking around. They die piece by piece. So these animals know what's going on. They feel pain, they feel fear. They have a level of intelligence that varies from animal to animal, but to suggest that they just lightly walk off to their death so that people can eat them is just people trying to deny the truth to, I guess, somehow make themselves feel a little better.
Yeah, I don't really understand this whole like the trying to sell the idea that animals don't know what's going on. Like I just don't get it. I never have processed in my life. Like it's one thing to say a cow can't do algebra, but to talk about animals not having the basic understanding that, oh, something bad and scary is like gonna like is happening because there's lots of awful things going around you, like screaming noises, bodily fluids, things like that, and to suggest an animal isn't like, oh, that's not good. I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
And that it really is that issue, and learning more and more about that issue that, brought me to my path of vegetarianism, a path that you, of course, joined me on.
Yes. So we are, so this episode started out a little, well, it is a serious thing. So I'm just going to say serious, but we are going to talk about our life journeys, paths to vegetarianism, why it is a good thing, why you should definitely consider doing it, and why it's good, not just for not killing animals, but good for your body and actually good for the planet as well. So I am 25 and I have only been a vegetarian for like 2-3 years. I really started right before I went to law school. But Mom, you've been a vegetarian for like a really long time.
For like a really long time. But, I think the truth is that I became a vegetarian around the same age in life that you are. Perhaps I started, well, not that you are now, but that you started. And I think I perhaps started a little bit younger. But, my journey was one where I grew up eating very healthfully. My mother believed in fruits and vegetables, but meat was very much part of our diet. And then over time, as I became more aware of environmental issues, and I know that Anneke is going to give us the facts and the figures, I just more have the experience. But as I started to learn more and more about the footprint of the raising and the slaughtering and the transporting of meat on the environment, but for me, more importantly, about how the animals were treated during their lives, and then that last experience to slaughter. But it wasn't just the last experience to slaughter; it was really how they were treated, being locked away from the sun in cement places and spaces, and not having a natural life. I sort of evolved, and I, along with Oma, your grandmother, my mother, found a local farm, and we used to then start to buy our meat from the farm, where we could see the animals out, and having good quality life, and that there was also a lesser environmental footprint. And so we sort of transitioned, and we only bought meat from that farm. And then as I became more mindful and thoughtful about the animal, their lives, their experiences, and the whole issue, environmental and otherwise, for me personally, I just decided that I didn't want to eat meat anymore. I really, it wasn't right for me. I couldn't bear what was happening to the animals and to the earth. And so it was in my early 20s, I think, that I transitioned to vegetarianism, and that was my path.
Well, and I think that's so interesting because in our family cookbook, there's a lot of recipes with like meat. And I know, even when you're a vegetarian, Oma still would like make me meat. Like I had the meatballs and gravy that I loved from her. And so so I think it's definitely interesting. A lot of people, I think, have the misconception that those of us that are vegetarian came from like a very like hippy dippy life of like only eat fruits and veggies and from the ground, and which is good, but like that's the only exposure. And it's like many vegetarians came from like very meat heavy families, and something happened along the way, whether it was a health concern, whether it was an animal relationship concern, that's like, I don't really want to participate in this anymore. And I think too, like that's so interesting too that you and Oma, and I think it's sad that not many people get that experience, though, that you get to go to a farm and see like, oh, this is how animals actually should be living. So even if you don't decide to fully give up meat, you're deciding to, select meat from an animal that's not been tortured its whole life. And like, there's no way to say like has a good end, obviously, because it's sad that an animal dies, but like they're not tormented. And I think that's like always a good first step for people, is like buy your animal products from an animal that from somewhere that treats their animals well and they're not tortured every day. But like, yeah, you didn't, like your family
Yeah, it
ate
was an
meat.
evolution. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was an evolution. And then even when, when you were growing up, I had you, and your father and I were not together from very early on. When you would go stay with your father, you ate meat because that's what he and his mother fed you. And when you would go visit Oma ate a lot less meat, but she continued to eat meat. And when you were there alone with her, she would feed you meat. When I was there, she would cook a vegetarian meal. And so then you, over your life, because I wasn't going to force my life decision on your father, right? Like he had to choose how he was going to raise you when you were with him. And that was my right as well when you were with me. So when you were with me, you were a vegetarian. And so you sort of had this split personality over the course of your life. And then you had your own evolution to vegetarianism.
Yeah. I mean, I think mine's always been weird. I feel like because I'm a picky eater. So for anyone listening, it's like, I couldn't be vegetarian because I'm a picky eater. Got
Oh
you.
my gosh, oh boy, is she a picky eater. Whoa.
Okay, to be fair, also my mother fed me a very good diet, but my dad fed me like Kraft mac and cheese singles and grandma and pop chicken nuggets and french fries and like sugary cereal for breakfast. So like, sorry mom, but like when the kid gets both, like I'm gonna lean towards the unhealthy stuff, as we know people tend to do. But
now, on the other hand, just to jump in there, your brother, 10 years younger than you, right, who has always been vegetarian.
I know, a little.
He also, he
Little goody
ate
two
similarly,
shoes.
very picky eater, but he ate similarly, but in a vegetarian way, right? He would have those vegetarian chicken nuggets, vegetarian taco meat, which is like what he eats all the time now. He would have veggie dogs versus hot dogs. So, he also super picky eater, but there is a way to, it's about what you're picky about. And so when he was being picky, it's just, I made sure that his options were vegetarian options. Now, also for the audience, interestingly enough, right? I'm vegetarian. My son is vegetarian. My husband eats meat, and he has his four children that are his but not mine, but they lived with us. And then our current son Vim we share, and then Anneke was mine and she lived with us, so we had a very full house. And I would cook for myself and for Vim, and Dave would cook for the other kids. And then pretty early on, one of my stepchildren, Stephen, became vegetarian. So then I cooked for Vim and Stephen and myself, and Dave would often cook meat options for the rest of the family. And so we just sort of found a way to blend and mix. And that was a time when Anneke was still going off to her father and being fed meat there. So, it's been an interesting mix up in evolution. But the point being, coming back to the original point, is you can have a picky eater and they could still be vegetarian.
Well, and I think too, like nowadays, I think it can be easier to transition in the sense of flavor. Like I know these products can be more expensive, so I'm not pretending like that they're super cheap, but like you have the Beyond Burger, the corn, QUORN, like chicken nuggets, the Gardein stuff. So you can, if you're like, oh man, I just really love these things, you can like pretty much supplement it with a plant-based option, especially for kids. Like I totally encourage anybody, if you have a kid that's like, most kids chicken nuggets are their staple, get them the vegetarian chicken nuggets and don't tell them. Just see what the reaction is. And I think like that can be, you're not tricking them. Like you're trying to see if they like something different. And it's not easy. Like, yeah, I was a picky eater and I had points of time where I was like, I'm going to try being vegetarian. And then I couldn't like find anything in the school cafeteria that I could eat. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to eat the burger and stuff. And it would still kind of like bother me, but I couldn't get past my roadblock of being a picky eater. And for me, I think it became easier when at the time I was dating somebody who was also vegetarian. And so we were kind of like in it together when we would go out to eat and stuff. And so that made the start a little bit easier. So if you're also kind of like, I like find a friend or ask your partner or a family member, like, hey, would you do this with me? And like, you don't have like, just say like for 2 weeks or a month and just try it. And I think you'll find it's not as hard as it seems. I like, yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, for you, like, what was it like? Because you didn't have those like substitutes. So what was it like to switch from, like having meat in your diet to like not?
Yeah, and to this day, I don't really eat much in the way of those substitutes. Interestingly enough, as you know, I exercise a lot, and I'm constantly hearing, "You don't eat enough protein." I figure it out. I find a way to make it to make it work. But because I became vegetarian, because of the reason I became vegetarian, the mindfulness about the animals, their quality of their life, the fact that they were being slaughtered to feed me, it was actually pretty easy. I think it's sort of, like I said, I transitioned to a different kind of meat, and then sort of less and less. And I just said, I don't feel, it bothered me. So, and then I just sort of stopped, and then it was kind of figuring out, what would I do? Now, I do eat eggs, but I eat eggs where we're very careful. And Dave, my husband, Anneke's bonus dad, Vim's dad, he is like, he does our food shopping, and he investigates all the ins and outs because he knows how important it is to me. And we make sure that we get eggs from places where the really do have good quality of life. They are out, they're not getting their beaks cut, which is very painful for them. They're not, ultimately going to slaughter. They're there for the eggs. And so I will eat eggs. And then I'm not big on beans and tofu, but sometimes I put, anyway, it sort of just
I'm getting good at
on its
tofu.
own.
I would say I'm getting good at tofu. Tofu does not sound good, but if you know how to marinate it or like make it crispy in the oven, I'm getting good at tofu. So, and I'm so tired of everyone being like, tofu is so gross. No, it's not. And the key, I think the key to a successful vegetarian diet, like for people switching, is you do have to know how to cook, in the sense of like, add a sauce, add the seasoning, do different kinds. Like I'm a picky eater. I don't like mushy vegetables. I hate steamed broccoli. I hate like anything out of a can, or like squishy mushrooms. So like I got an air fryer for Christmas from my dad, and I am like making vegetables in it, and they're nice and crispy. So, and that's how I like them. So it's just like finding what works for you. And then I'm experimenting with marinades. So if you're like,
oh man, I gotta come visit you for a while. Sounds like I need you to cook for me.
Well, that's what I just like. I think too, people are like, it can be a little bit more work depending on what you want, but like it's experimenting. It's like with anything. It's also just like too, how some of the best meat that people talk about, it's been seasoned, it's been marinated, it's been smoked, like whatever. So it's just like finding, how do you do that with your vegetables, your tofu, your substitute? Like, it's not boring.
Some of those recipes, when I put together that cookbook for you of all Oma's recipes, I wanted to include her recipes.
Yeah.
But a number of them I have tried to do with, with vegetarian alternatives, and it's fantastic. I've done goulash where I've replaced, the chunks of beef with seitan. And those that lovely mushroom sauce, which I would make for you without mushrooms, but was made with chicken broth and mushrooms and other things, and then these meatballs, and then it was put over rice and beans, delicious. Green beans, not beans, legume beans. And I made it with a meat substitute, and man, because that was one of my favorites all the time. Man, is that fantastic. And then haché, which is like an onion stew that would have chunks of meat. Did that also with seitan, another vegetarian substitute.
Seitan is
Just
really good.
fantastic.
I
Oh my
love
gosh, it's
seitan.
good.
I also, and like, yeah, you can find sometimes too. And I will say again, I think having those substitutes, those meat substitutes can help. So when I was in Holland, for study abroad, there's this treat called bitterballen, and it's basically kind of like deep fried beef, and it's like got gravy in it. It's really good. And I would, oh my God, eat it all the time. And definitely when I was vegetarian, I was like, man, like I really loved it. And I found the recipe for bitterballen, and it has, you know, like beef meat and like bone broth or beef broth. And so I just replaced it with the Beyond Meat crumbles and then vegetable broth, and tasted just as good. So like it was great. You can find a lot of substitutes if you are still kind of transitioning. Like there are like meat flavors, meat things, and for some people too, like I know for you, Mom, like yeah, like you're saying, like you don't want the concept of eating meat.
When I look at like the seitan and other things, and they say chicken flavored seitan or beef, and I'm just like, oh, gross, because that's not like, I'm not looking for that flavor and that taste. And actually, to me, that's like would be reminiscent of this thing that I wanted to get away from. So that never really strikes my fancy. But as you said, for other people it does. And I'll tell you, that vegetarian taco meat, I mean, you know that, Anneke, Vim eats that, 3 times a week. And he puts on, the taco seasoning that you get and mixes that up and eats it with the shells. And it's just like really superb. As you said, a lot of it is in the spices and the sauciness. And that if you have that saucy, spicy flavor, and then you have whatever the thing in it, whether it's seitan or you're making meatballs with vegetarian options, it has a very similar texture to the meat. And so that's a great way for people to transition.
Yeah, I think it's just experimenting too. Like my friend Sheila made for us last week. We were making tacos, and I even said like, hey, I'll bring over my vegetarian taco meat. So like, I can either make my own or you guys can have that. She's like, no, I got it. I'm like, okay. And she put sweet potatoes instead of like the meat part, which was actually really good. I mean, I just think it's a lot of, go on Pinterest, go on Google, and just like type in something and just try it. You're not going to like everything. Like I've made things I'm like, awful. And it's just like finding it. But also, since I have some facts, let's talk about how being a vegetarian is super healthy. Well, really good for you.
Cool.
So first, so from Healthline, vegetarianism in general has been proven to reduce risk of cancer, which like I think too is just kind of generally makes sense, because especially if you're doing fruits and veggies and organics and things like that, you're not being exposed to as many of like the chemicals and things that end up getting pumped into our body. And I think most diets nowadays are like attempts to have people eat better. It's like I think you said this too, like the closer it is to the ground, the better it is for you.
Yeah. And a lot of things with the animals too, is they pump them full of antibiotics and other things, and growth hormones and things to make them bigger and fatter and plumper and I guess more cost efficient. And so, those contaminants stay in the flesh that you're eating, and that means it's going into your body.
Well, I remember when I'll give you guys some more facts in a second, but on that note, when I was
I love you to pepper in the facts, man. You are the great facts lady.
When I was, so also too, for people, like you don't have to do it 100%. Like I think I kind of started my freshman year of college. I decided I wasn't going to eat pork anymore. I'm not saying any animal is more important than the other, obviously, but I had felt like this really special connection to pigs. And everyone who knows me knows I want to pet pigs. So I was like, I'm not going to eat pork anymore. It's bothering me. I can't do it. And I went to this place called Farm Sanctuary, which is where they rescue abused farm animals. And so first off, the pigs, I love the pigs. And I think part of it was one of them looks like the pig from this book called Hope, that's about a pig actually at that same farm sanctuary, but I don't think it's the same pig. That looked like this pig from Hope. And it like really...
It used to be the same pig. I mean, but I think that it might actually when you were there, but anyway, but
it looked like the boy pig that's like blue and white spotted. That's what it looked like. So I don't know if it was him. But so that was like really touching. But my other favorite animal at Farm Sanctuary, his name was Thunder, and he was a Kobe beef cow. And Thunder is massive, huge, like, and obscenely large, because Thunder is 3 years old and Kobe beef cows don't live past like a year and a half, because that's when they go to slaughter. So he's pumped full of all those growth hormones. So he just keeps growing and growing and growing. And so like, that's the unfortunate thing, is I'm sure he's passed away by now, but like, that even the animals that are rescued are going to have a poor quality of life in some respects, because their bodies are not meant to live that long, because that's not how they were bred. And so, yeah, so I can only imagine people who are eating meat, like, you're ingesting what's making Thunder 4 times the size he's supposed to be. Or like turkeys that at factory farms, they make them so fat that their legs literally collapse from underneath them because they can't walk anymore. So that's what you're putting in your body, just FYI.
And for dairy cows too, they also pump them through full of a chemical that makes it so they produce more milk, and then their udders get so full on a regular basis that it's actually physically painful for them, right?
Yeah.
So whatever that chemical, that growth hormone, that's going into all of that. But then also, as you said, this is another ramification, is the life experience of that animal. Like, oh, they're just making more milk. Well, you know what? If you've ever been a nursing mother, when your breasts are filled with milk because your child hasn't drank for a while, it becomes painful. It becomes painful. And these cows are experiencing that on a daily basis.
Yeah. So it's just, more things to think about, guys. But being vegetarian also prevents type 2 diabetes. Which is the one you get like from eating too much bad stuff, not the one that you're born with. It can lower blood pressure. And there actually was a study done in Sweden where they had 24 participants, and 22 out of the 24 participants who ate, so this was a vegan diet, saw improvements in their asthma symptoms, including less dependency on their asthma medication. So that was pretty interesting to me, actually. And of course, that's a vegan diet, but still. And then some other numbers really quick is that one study of 76,000 participants, this is from Harvard Medical School, big deal, guys, said that vegetarians were 25%, in that study, were 25% less likely to die of heart disease. And then it says vegetarians usually, so actually I'll save this one later. So there are significant health benefits, because I think too, you're putting less of the processed crap in your body. And like, whatever your thoughts are on human beings were born to eat meat or whatever, I go back and forth on whatever the validity of that is. Human beings are definitely not supposed to eat as much meat as we do today. Like, you are not supposed to eat meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't care what your argument is, like, not good for you.
Yeah, and in your facts, I'll tell you, as coming from a family where cancer is not unheard of, it makes me very mindful to hear you say that and think, well, maybe I am reducing the likelihood that I will go down the same path as many others in my family and succumb to cancer because of the way I eat. Maybe not, but maybe there's a lesser chance. Maybe even if I do get cancer, I didn't get pancreatic like Oma did. Maybe Oma got pancreatic cancer because of what she was eating or what she was breathing when she was in Holland when the war was happening. I mean, there are so many things, but I think anything that we can do, we're exposed to so many different kinds of things in our world, not just chemicals, but stress, right? Stress is really bad for your health and makes you succumb to things much more frequently. So anything we can do that helps lower the burden of attacks on our body, that makes us more vulnerable to illnesses, I think is a good thing. And I think, as you said, it's an enjoyable way to eat. It's like, I'm definitely not suffering. I, as anybody knows me, I love to eat. And one of the beautiful things about vegetables is I can eat more of them. Yeah. And other people can eat of the kinds of things they eat because of what they are, and because of the calories, and because of the fat, and because of the makeup. So, anybody who ever eats with me knows that While other people might take 10 green beans on the plate, my whole plate is just overflowing full. Other people take a small little dinky salad. I take the huge big salad bowl that's usually the size of bowl that feeds the whole table, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's just about like whatever you want to eat, you want to eat, but like if in terms of like health benefits and like just being like a healthier person, like vegetables and fruits are good for you because they're from the earth and like duh. Um, but so one of the things, Mom, I think that I'm interested in. So I remember, I feel like this has at least calmed down a little bit, but I want to know, like, when you were a vegetarian, becoming a vegetarian, was there like a lot of like heckling going on, or people kind of like making fun of you or anything, like, oh, like rabbit food?
Oh my gosh. And the it's even not so much that. I think the thing that always would strike me most is when I would sit down to a meal with friends, like you might go out to lunch or go out to dinner, and you'd look at the menu. And I would simply find the vegetarian option. That's all. And sometimes it's difficult. And maybe I take a couple of sides, or sometimes I'd say, can I have that, but please hold the meat. I'm just ordering the meal that I want to order. And then often I get, well, there's really one of three reactions. One is no reaction, which is great. You order your food, I order my food. We're all good. We're happy, and we eat what we want. Another reaction is, oh my gosh, are you going to be upset if I order meat? Or, and I'm like, no, I didn't ask you to change the way you're eating, but no, I'm good with whatever. But they're just being thoughtful, right? They're being mindful. They're thinking it might bother me. And that's a kindness. I mean, I'm always struck by that because I sort of find it odd. Like I wouldn't ask somebody to eat differently because I happen to be eating at the same table as them. But okay, but that, I think is people trying to be thoughtful and mindful. But then I get people who start making fun of what I'm eating, and I guess you're right, and commenting on vegetarianism and making remarks like, well, people are supposed to eat meat, and they like have all these weird defensive comments and postures and things that they're saying to me as though I said a single word about what they were ordering. It's like they order and then they have this weird negative reaction. And I'm just sitting there. I just ordered the meal that I wanted to eat and didn't say a word, no facial expression, no nothing. But when people start doing that, first off, and my initial reaction is like, hey, no. But then my second reaction, if they keep going, is to say, look, if you want to eat flesh, that's on you. Like, I got no problem with that. And of course, people that really get bothered with me calling it flesh, but that's what it is. But look, I didn't say anything, right? Like I was just sitting here happily going to order and enjoy a lovely vegetarian meal. I didn't comment that it was vegetarian. I didn't comment that I was vegetarian. I said nothing. But they ordered their meat. They heard me order my vegetarianism. And then again, they get like this weird attacky kind of thing going on. And that I don't understand. And I think that to me, that suggests you're feeling a little bit of guilt about your choice.
Yeah.
Because I didn't say anything. So, you need to, if that's your reaction when somebody around you orders vegetarian, maybe you should think a little bit more about why it's bothering you so much.
Which I also think like too, I think there are unfortunately people who are vegetarian and vegan and who kind of like guilt trip the people who do eat meat, or like vegans who I've been guilt tripped by vegans for being vegetarian. Be like, well, why don't you just cut out like the eggs and the cheese? And I joke around like, well, I'm Dutch, like I'm not gonna cut out cheese. But I try and make sure it's from a good place. But anyway,
that's the thing. It's the source on that. And again, it depends on your motivation. Like you said, if it's health and the quality of life of the animal, then there are ways to contend with that.
Yeah. But like guilt, like you're not doing it. I'm saying for people who do, like trying to guilt somebody into switching to the diet, they're not going to do it. Like it's like you're dealing with, you have to think about people in as little kids in that way of like, they're just going to dig in deep and be like, well, I am not wrong. So I think it's always good to have a positive, like, oh, like, oh, hey, like this, like if you do get tofu, this tofu is really great. Like, do you want to give it a try? Don't say anything about them eating meat. But like, yeah, too, it's also like I'm just eating my vegetarian meal and you ordered meat too, like, I'm not judging you. It's just that's your life choice and this is mine. And if you want to chit chat about it, fine. Yeah, I never understand or I think for me, I'd always, and I think it's been dispelled. I remember when I was interning at Philadelphia Zoo and I was doing gorilla talk. So you get the little microphone and you hang out by the gorillas all day and then you talk to people. And there was a dad who brought his little boy up and he goes, see, son, like that's why you have to eat lots of meat and get all your protein because you can be big and strong, like pointing at the gorillas, which then I got on the microphone and I go, yeah, hi everybody, like not at him, just to the general public, like welcome to Gorilla Talk. Here's our gorillas, blah, blah, blah. And like, did you know that these guys are so big based off a solely vegetarian diet? Like the biggest animals, or at least mammals, are elephants, rhinos, gorillas, very muscular animals, and they only eat fruits and veggies.
Oh, that's an interesting fact check right there.
So you get like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this whole like dispelling about protein. And so if someone ever says, well, you can't possibly, and there's many, I don't know them all, but there's a bunch of like NFL players, there's a bunch of like Olympic body lifters or bodybuilders that are vegan or vegetarian. And so you can get plenty of protein. Also, like nowadays, if you're not getting it from solely what you're eating, get a protein powder, get a supplement. Like that's also the thing. If you're missing anything, you get a supplement. But vegetarians actually usually, this is from Harvard Medical School too, usually meet their protein needs from dairy or egg products. But also if you're vegan, you can also get it from peas, beans, lentils, chickpeas, seeds, nuts, soy products, and whole grains. So if anyone tells you you're vegetarian, you're not getting enough protein, stupid, wrong. Say, nuh-uh, wrong.
You know what, an interesting thing in our family life. So, right, Vim was pretty much vegetarian all the way through. I'm not sure if at any point, there may have been times when he ate meat, like when all you kids went out to a fast food place or something. But for the most part, you had your mixed life that we talked about, and then switched to vegetarianism.
I think
And
he had
your
a brief period where he also was like in the chicken nugget phase, and that was really it.
Yeah. And then Stephen, who actually is just a few months older than you, about 6 months older than you, your stepbrother, Dave's youngest, of his children that are not my biological children. Stephen, when he came to live with us, actually quite quickly turned to vegetarianism, and he was a full-on vegetarian. I remember he decided he was going to be vegetarian. He announced it. 2 weeks later was Thanksgiving. You know what?
Yeah.
And we wondered, do you think he's going to stick with it? Nope, he stuck with it. He never strayed. He was maybe 9 years old, and maybe even 8, but I think 9. And he was vegetarian. And then all of a sudden, oh, my heart sank. Of course, it's his choice, not my choice. But and then one day when he was around the time I think you were turning to vegetarianism,
he switched, and I was like, I'm a vegetarian now.
He, like, apparently, as story has it, he woke up one morning and just decided he was going to eat meat again. And he ate like 6 hamburgers or something absurd, and is now a full-on meat eater again. So, and I don't know what that's about. That's sort of interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think too, for people, again, like I will say, I can understand it is difficult for certain people to totally make the switch. Do the, like, Ithaca, when I went, we used to, the one dining hall had Meatless Mondays was a big thing. So, and I think a lot of schools also do like a meatless day. So to start out, like pick one day a week, and say like, I'm not going to eat any meat today. And then maybe switch to like, I'm only going to eat meat at dinner time on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then like you can slowly like transition out of it. It doesn't have to be cold turkey. Yeah, I don't know why Steven did that, but it happens. It's okay. But also being vegetarian is better for you. And like I think too that always on the health thing is, it makes me laugh when people try to talk about a health thing, because Vim is like a top-notch hockey hockey star, even only at 15. He
Oh my
keeps
gosh,
up with,
he's like a little ball of muscle.
yeah, like he's crazy good at sports. I fell off the exercise wagon, but since being vegetarian, like I still do my lifting, I still do my hockey, I still do my exercise. And you are a crazy, been lifting heavy weights like the whole life that I've known you. And so for anyone to suggest that like you can't be vegetarian and not just fit but strong, wrong. Wrong.
You know what? Something when I was looking at my fact check about the animals going to slaughter, this was just another thing that came up, and I think you and I talked about it. We were on a trip, I don't know, where was it, to Ecuador, and you hadn't become vegetarian yet, and you ordered whatever that dish is called, but it's actually octopus. What's that
The
called?
paella?
Yeah, something like that. It had octopus in it.
Yeah.
And I remember being so like, ooh, because, and I was reminded in my fact check research, how smart it's octopi, right?
Octopi.
Octopi are, that they have their brain. They're extremely intelligent, and that the size of their brain relative to their body is much larger than what is it? It says they have a larger brain for their body size than animals, all animals except birds and mammals. They have actually a little brain in each of their tentacles. They're known to be able to like escape from their aquariums with lids on them, go out, get food or do whatever they're going to do, and then go back in and close the lid. Like I remember a research project where something was happening in the lab and the people couldn't figure out what. I think food was getting eaten from another aquarium
Yeah, I think
or
I've heard
container.
this.
And they couldn't figure out why. And then when I guess somebody, they had a camera or something on it, and the octopus, when everybody left the lab, like got its lid off, escaped, ate the other creatures, and then went back in. I think it was maybe fish in another tank or something, then went back into its tank and closed the lid so nobody would know. I mean, super, super, super smart animals. And, it's just striking when you think about how intelligent they are, and then think about that intelligence being, dead chunks on a plate for somebody to eat. To me, it's like, it's just hard for me to process. Again, if somebody else is eating that way and I'm at the table with you, I'm not going to say anything. That's just what's going on in my brain.
Well, there's actually on the octopus note too, just really quick, there's a good movie. I watched it, I cried. It's called My Octopus Teacher. It's on Netflix. And it's about like a guy who just kind of does snorkeling. I don't know why he does it. I forget. I missed that part. He does snorkeling and he comes across an octopus and he's just like filming her. And basically, the story is that him and the octopus become bonded. And so like every time he finds her and she shows up and like cradles him. And I mean, it's more of this story of also too, like he's walking this fine line of like, I've made this connection with this creature, but I'm also not trying to be this human being, like interfering with nature in the natural process of things, which is hard. Like he gets to a point where there's sharks kind of like going around the octopus den and he's very torn about like what he's supposed to do because he has this love for this octopus, but then like he's interfering in nature. Anyways, this octopus becomes bonded to him and they're like together the whole time. It's so cute and sweet. Like it's almost like, I hate to compare, like it's like a dog. He goes in, the octopus comes up and hangs out with him. And
At the
it's so
risk of
cute.
ruining the show, I'm not going to ask you what his decision was, but for me, I think
You gotta watch it. It's
yeah, I won't be able to.
the movie doesn't end there. I'll tell you that much. You gotta, but it's definitely it's weird. But I mean, it's a good story. I think it's definitely. Anyways,
You have like a really incredible way of taking that information in because you want to translate it. Like when you were in elementary school and you started to learn about and hear, I think you had asked me, and maybe Stephen also had asked me about, why I was a vegetarian, and we talked about the animals and how the animals were treated. And you decided that you were going to, and I don't remember why you settled on this thing, but you decided that you were going to get Ithan Elementary School, the Radnor Township School District, to transition from factory farm eggs to free range eggs. And you were talking about factory farming in general, and you did all this research into factory farms, their impact on the animals, their impact on the environment, how they were harmful to the workers themselves, physically, emotionally, for their health, how they were harmful to neighbors. And you did this presentation to your class that was so powerful. And then you and I spoke, and you decided you wanted to get the school to change. And then we worked together to get you an opportunity to speak to some of the decision makers at the school board. And of course, they gave you some time to listen, and then they tried to poo-poo you away. But long story short, the school district did, for a period of time, I don't know if they've still followed it through, did actually change to free range eggs. And I was always so struck. You were in elementary school, and you had this incredible power of knowing that you wanted to make change for these animals. You did the research, you took the information in, it bothered you, it upset you, but you knew that you had to stick to that process if you were going to help them by advocating for them. So that's why when you talk about like this film and films like this, you've just always had this incredible power for watching those kinds of things and knowing that that information would help you help the animals. And so you were willing to watch it. For me, I can't watch those shows. They break my heart. And
Yeah, I mean, they're
it.
not like, I also think when I'm not gonna pretend like there's days when I first switched from not eating pork. I used to, before that, I had a big affinity for ribs. Also, this just goes to show really quick, like I was young doing that, and I still ate meat at the time, but like the meat that my family got for me, I was like, well, I don't want to eat factory farm meat. Like I want to at least make sure that I'm like, and I wasn't saying the school had to be vegetarian, but I was saying we should get our eggs from somewhere that the chickens actually live a good life. So you, like, just FYI for everybody, if you're like, well, I can't, you can make good changes step by step. But I used to love ribs. And when I would be in college, and I remember there was one day I was like, my friends were asking me if we were going to go out to dinner. We were going to a place that I used to go to that I was like, oh, I love their ribs. And I was like, man, it's going to be so hard to not order those. Like, they're so good. And I knew one of my friends was also going to order them. And before we went to dinner, and I'm not advocating for anybody to necessarily do this because it sucks. Like, it hurts. I went on and I watched like an undercover video from a factory farm that dealt with a pig farm, and it is horrifying and it is upsetting. And it was just like kind of that little reminder of like, this is why I'm doing this. And I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's like sometimes you have to watch the things that make you uncomfortable to remember why you're doing what you're doing. And also too, for anyone that's like, if you're not going to be vegetarian necessarily for yourself, do it for the animals and do it for the planet, because being a vegetarian actually has a lot of great implications for our natural world. So like, let's get some facts for you guys really quick. I love my numbers.
Get me some facts, man.
Well, just like for people too, they're like, oh, like health. Like I know there's, for whatever reason, there's still a debate on the health benefits. I'm like, that's stupid. Stop. But here, okay, so this is a good one. So this from Time. Researchers assessed 4 different scenarios with humans consuming varying levels of meat to evaluate links between diet, health, and the environment. So this might have a little bit to do with the environment and like your health when you hear the end of it. The lowest level of meat consumption, which is a widespread vegan diet, could help avoid more than 8 million deaths by 2050. A vegetarian diet would save 7.3 million lives.
Wow.
So I think that's a combination of like your own health benefits,
water pollution, air pollution. Yeah,
which is so
and
like,
also the climate change footprint is pretty significant.
Yeah, well, so one of the things I was reading is, a lot of South America is pretty much used for beef agriculture land, and so it's a lot of like, it's one of the biggest decimations of the rainforest is cutting down the rainforest to make space for livestock. And so that all the land is super dry. So it's also resulted in like large forest fires. And as we all know, like climate change is making fires worse, guys. And you don't have that extra layer of protection. And we obviously don't have those trees anymore to cycle out the CO2 and things like that. But for water, 1 pound of meat requires 2,400 gallons of water. and a large pig farm. So we're talking about like, when we're talking about farms and we're talking about bad farms, we're talking about factory farms, people, just FYI.
Yeah, not the local family or organic family farm. Two entirely different beasts.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah. So a large pig farm may need as much water as an entire city, versus 1 pound of wheat only requires 25 gallons of water. So
that's pretty incredible.
big
We
water
should
saving.
have an organic farmer on sometime. That
We
would be
should.
for interest. They're really fantastic people, how they think through their farming.
Well,
I'm
and
glad you
that's-
gave those numbers. I think it's really important. As you said, it's like whatever's your issue. If your issue is your health, if your issue is animals, if your issue is the planet, if your issue is the climate crisis, if your issue is the safety of your children and them actually having a future planet to live on that's safe, there's a reason to do this for everyone. And it is doable. It is doable and it's enjoyable.
And if you're a money person and you don't care about your health or the climate, let me tell you this, that that a vegetarian diet annually can save a vegetarian diet annually can save $1 trillion by preventing healthcare costs. So for people that don't understand how that works, that's like the money that is being spent. It didn't break down if it's like taxpayer dollars or like individual funds. I'm sure it's a little bit of both.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
When people go to the emergency room, if they don't have health insurance, right, it comes back on the system as a whole. There are a lot of things.
Yeah. So it's like the
that.
healthcare costs of like the ambulance rides, the nurses, the public services.
I think that I think it's a mixed bag.
It's a mix of
I think
things.
there's a whole lot. Yeah.
Like whoever, like EMS, things like that. So that's what they're talking about in how like healthcare costs is, it's like the diseases and the ways people get sick because you don't have a vegetarian diet. So it's like maybe if people had a vegetarian diet, they would be healthier and we'd be saving more money. Because I think too, the thing is, if you're buying factory farm meat, if you're buying crap, like there's chemicals and there's stuff in it and it's making you sick, and it's making you sick faster.
Wow. This has been a very interesting show, talking about a very interesting topic. We're not judgy. We're just sharing our experience and our thoughts. You may, or you may be a meat eater, and this may just be interested to you to get into the psyche of those who aren't eating meat, right?
Yeah.
And we're not here to judge you or to make you uncomfortable at a meal. But just to share with you our thoughts, our mindfulness, our experience, and our transition from one lifestyle to another.
And again, you can do small things. Do a meatless Monday dinner with your family. Decide that instead of buying the factory farm meat, you're going to go find a local farmer in your area and buy from them. There's lots of different ways to do a healthier diet for you and for the planet. Also, I'm pretty sure buying meat from a more local farm is also probably better for the planet than buying from a big carbon emitting factory farm.
And it's good for the local farmer, right?
Yeah.
You're supporting local business. You're supporting members of your community who are working hard to make a living for themselves and their families. And, why not give the dollars to them than to some big factory farm far away who is not just making gobs of money on the backs of the animals, but is literally having a huge harmful footprint on the planet. And they are not paying for the environmental costs that they are foisting on the rest of us. The rest of us are covering those costs in our lost health or in tax dollars to clean it up or all kinds of ways, right? So better to go with that local farmer, that local organic farm that's doing it the right way, making money for their families and making, living a life, advancing a farming practice that is good for the earth, good for themselves, good for you, good all the way around,
Which also, and don't forget, factory farms are usually placed in BIPOC communities, sacrifice zones, and pollute and distribute toxic emissions, awful, like contaminated water to people that are already dealing with low income and health issues. And so that is also a big thing, is factory farms are still placed in areas of communities that are being targeted as environmental sacrifice zones. So we're also helping to shut down that industry by supporting your local farmer, who also probably sells a great selection of fruit and veggies that you
Oh
can
my
try for
gosh.
your vegetarian dinner.
And when you go there, you can actually talk to the farmer, right? And you can make a new friend.
Oh yeah.
And you can find a new aspect of your community, and you can have a great time. Maybe they have pick your own berries, and which is
Oh,
great
the
fun.
best.
So many different aspects of farms. There's also these farms are really, getting into having petting zoos and
Mhm.
corn mazes and all sorts of different fun ways to give your family an opportunity to engage with them, their community, and with healthy soils and healthy food. So on the uplifting side too, there are so many positives of going to the local farm, whether you're eating meat or whether you're not, getting involved with your local farming family. Hook up with a CSA, right?
Mhm.
What is it? Community supported agriculture. We do that. We buy a share in fruits and vegetables every week. We pick up our fruits and vegetables that come from the farm and local farmers. And it's fun and exciting and it's delicious. And we know we're helping the farmers get an income that they can count on. So there's just lots of ways to really have fun with this, to benefit from this, and to benefit your community. And if none of this resonates with you, at least it gives you a window into the life of a vegetarian.
Yeah. So I think that with that, we are going to close out this episode. A reminder that if you like what we do, if you like this podcast, please share it on your social media, tell people to follow us, subscribe, all that, like click subscribe. And as you know, my mom, the wonderful Maya Van Rossum, is the mother of the Green Amendment. She has her own nonprofit, Green Amendments for the Generations, that fights for your constitutional right to breathe clean air, have pure water, and a healthy environment for future generations. So if you would like to go support that, anything from $1 can help make a huge difference. So go to forthegenerations.org and feel free to make a donation or get involved, sign any petitions, things like that, and help protect the planet in a way besides becoming a vegetarian.
And if you live in the Delaware River watershed, I'm also the Delaware River Keeper. Support the Delaware River Keeper Network. Get active. In another way to get active with your local community.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Green Jeans Pod. And if you listened to this episode and made a great vegetarian meal, let us know. We would love to share some of the recipes, maybe give some ideas of what people can do. I, tonight, am actually making vegetarian fajitas.
Ooh, delicious.
So that is what I will be making.
With
All
that,
right.
have a great week, everyone.
Until next time.
Until